This happened when I was a kid. I was in the 5th grade and my friend, let's call him Ethan, invited me over to his place. He lived right by the ocean, and if you walked through the forest for half a mile, you'd reach a nice beach with a diving board. When I got to his house, we hung out, played video games, and talked. You know, typical kid stuff. Then we decided to go to the beach. It wasn't too far away and we knew we could get back in time for dinner, so we set off. To make the trip more adventurous, we decided to bushwhack our own path. After walking a couple of minutes, we hit a tall fence. "Crap," Ethan exclaimed. "Well, I guess we'll have to go back." Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted something. The fence went about 8 meters long and then stopped. My jaw dropped. There was a house. It was an old cabin with boarded up windows. The planks were falling off and you could see the old insulation underneath. It was gray in color and had flecks of blue paint. The fence led up to the side of the house, stopped, and then continued on the other side. What scared me the most was that there was no road. I mean, not even a clearing to get to the road. You'd have to walk 20 minutes. "Kevin, come on," Ethan yelled from behind me. "Look at this," I shouted back. Ethan walked up to me and his jaw dropped. There was no door, just a frame, and peering through the frame we could see that there was a back door, also with no frame. All we had to do was walk through the house, then we could get to the beach. I looked at Ethan. "Should we do it?" I asked him. He shrugged. "I don't see why not," he responded. Inside the house was dark, despite the sunlight pouring in through the door. We advanced slowly through the house, and Ethan pointed to the door. As we reached the door, I peered up the stairs. I grabbed Ethan and shoved him out the door. "What was it?" he said, as soon as we got away. My whole body shook. I must be going mad, I thought to myself. Eventually, I explained it to him. As we reached the door, I wanted to take one last look at the house. I glanced up the stairs and I saw the shadowy outline of a person. All I could see were eyes staring back at me and a crooked grin. Ethan and I took another route back home, and we told Ethan's mom. She laughed at us and said she'd been that way many times and there was no house. And we were angry because she didn't believe us, so we got out our cameras and went back the next day. When we got there was no house. It was just gone. No clearing, nothing. To this day, Ethan and I still wonder what it was. Was that man just a homeless person, or maybe he was something much, much worse? I suggested to Ethan a theory that scares me to this day. I had been reading about Russian folklore, and a page caught my attention. It was a story about a witch named Baba Yaga who had a moving house. She would eat naughty children, and parents used to use it to scare children. Was this a witch?
Back in 2016, my friend Lachlan and I thought about doing the best prank ever. It's the ghost girl walking through the streets prank. I went to some Halloween store where they sell the white dress that's the perfect fit for Lachlan. Then I got some red paint for fake blood for the white dress and a long wig for covering Lachlan's face. After buying the stuff, I went home to set it up. Lachlan tried on the whole costume, and I thought it was pretty scary. Scary enough to scare my friends, at least. These other two friends are Jesse and Gavin. Now it was time to set the plan into motion. I called the two of them and told them to meet each other in the car. Then come pick me up so we could drive around that night, around 10 p.m. They agreed and hung up. It was 8 p.m. at the time. The perfect time, in fact, to take Lachlan in his costume to the scary bridge that no one drives through anymore. It took us about half an hour to get there. I dropped Lachlan off on the scary bridge, telling him, "When you see the light of their car, walk all creepy like a ghost girl. See you when we're done." I drove back to the house and waited until 10. Soon Jesse and Gavin arrived, and I hopped in their car. I asked Jesse, who was driving, "Hey man, can I drive tonight?" He replied, Sure, why not? He let me in the driver's seat, and we took off. Now, this is where the fun begins. I make my way to the same street where I drove to drop Lachlan off on the scary bridge. But things get weird here. I must have driven about 20 minutes when I saw Lachlan walking on the road. He wasn't on the bridge, but the road. All Jesse and Gavin saw was a creepy, ghost-looking girl walking on the road. They were practically begging me to drive away now. I told them, "Wait, I need to text Lachlan about this." I texted him, "Hey dude, why are you 10 minutes away from the bridge and walking on the road?" A few seconds later, Lachlan texted back. He said, "What do you mean? I'm at the bridge waiting for y'all. Where are you anyway?" My heart sank when I read that. Quickly, I texted back, "Wait there, I'm picking you up. We're not doing this anymore." So, Lachlan was 10 minutes away. Who was in this costume? What are the odds that it's another prankster in the same outfit? Jesse and Gavin were still begging me to go back. I told them, "We need to go past this prankster." Jesse shouted, "No way!" I ignored him, and I began to drive past whoever was in the same costume. I drove slowly and steadily. When I passed the person, I got a glimpse of their face. I couldn't breathe. What I saw was either the most realistic-looking makeup, or that was not a costume. I drove faster now, knowing that I had to pick Lachlan up, but tempted to just drive away. 10 minutes later, I made it to the bridge where Lachlan was waiting. He was just sitting on a rock waiting for me. I honked at him and he came in. Lachlan asked me what was going on. Now everyone needed an answer. I told Lachlan what happened, and I told Jesse and Gavin about the prank we had planned. It was supposed to be a prank for you guys, but it was interrupted. I began to drive back, dreadfully knowing we'd have to pass the same stretch of road where we saw that girl. But 10 minutes later, when we should have been seeing her, she wasn't there. But I wasn't going to ask why. I just wanted to get home safely. 20 minutes after that, we got back home okay. We all talked about what happened. After the conversation, Jesse and Gavin headed home. Lachlan stayed the night, which was probably for the better. Because what we saw that night made me lose sleep and terrified me for months.
When I was a teenager, I would often explore the deep web with my friends, specifically weird stuff on Hidden Wiki. There were definitely a lot of links to choose from. I never clicked on the violent links because I'm not into that. My friend Latrice told me to click on one that says, "New best friend." After doing so, it takes you to a page where you have to make a profile. I put the name Lisa on my profile. My real name is Susan. Once I made the profile, you are directed to a main page that has categories. They were silly, serious, smart, and smothering. We clicked smothering. I thought it was funny. After choosing, there was a list of people with their pictures, male and female. I clicked on a profile of a guy that had the name 5, like the number 5. I entered, and it didn't seem like someone who would be a smothering friend. When I was searching through his profile, I received a message from him asking if I were looking for a friend. I looked at Latrice, and she laughed, but also told me to respond yes. So we're messaging back and forth for maybe 30 minutes, and then Latrice had to go. I told him I'll be back on tomorrow, and he said okay. Maybe a week went by where I would talk to him every night. He seemed very nice, so we exchanged numbers so we could talk more. Everything seemed fine until I clicked on another profile and someone else messaged me. I started talking with this other person, but still was texting the guy at 5, which I knew his real name now as William. The new guy had the name Bill on his profile. A day went by, and he seemed cool, but then William randomly asked me why I was talking with Bill. I didn't know what to say, so I never responded. He kept texting with angry messages, so I blocked him. I didn't receive any texts, only a single message on that site, and it said soon. One day after school, my friend Latrice came over to have a sleepover. We got comfortable, went to my room, and did our usual of surfing through the web, being nosy. I brought up that guy. Then I received a text message that said, "Why'd you block me?" from a random number. I replied with a question mark. Then it replied, "It's me, William." He texted me from another number after I blocked him. I told Latrice how creepy this guy is. Then Latrice stopped me from talking because she thought she heard something. Then I heard a voice. "I'm not that creepy." We both responded by screaming and looking around. I saw someone coming from under my bed, so we ran screaming out of my room, and my mother called the cops. They didn't get him because he left through my window, and nothing could be traced back to him. I'm starting to think that he was both of the people I was talking to. That definitely opened my eyes to the dangers of the internet. I would never visit the dark web again.
My name is Pascal. I'm 22 years old now, but this event happened 3 years ago when I was 19. It happened in the middle of the night when my parents were away for an important company meeting. The company was kind of far away from where we lived, so I stayed home by myself while they were gone. One time, while I was at home alone, I looked out the window randomly and froze. There was a tall man, almost dressed entirely in black. He was wearing a tuxedo and holding a kitchen knife. This guy was standing right outside of the door, looking at me. He wasn't laughing at all, and his head was twitching continuously. "Sir, please get off our property, otherwise I'll call the police." I opened the window and told him. Then the man replied, "Oh, you can do that if you want, as long as you don't look away." Because of this strange attitude, I felt anxious, so I grabbed my cell phone and called the police. But when I looked out the window again, he was gone. At that very moment, I heard footsteps coming from downstairs. I suddenly remembered that I forgot to lock my garden door, so it was still open. I thought I was gonna die at first, but then I pulled myself together. I got my bat and looked down the stairs, slowly, trying not to make a sound. There he was. He was just staring at me. He didn't move but said, "I told you not to look away." A few moments later, we heard sirens. The man still did not move. But then he suddenly changed his mind and walked over to me. I tried to swing my bat towards him, but I was so scared. I couldn't do anything except scream. The police broke down the door. One policeman tried to arrest him, and the other one tried to take the knife away from him, but the man resisted. He was strong. Even though he was outnumbered, they couldn't stop him. They threatened to shoot him in the foot, but he didn't care. Furthermore, he attacked the two policemen, and they tumbled down to the ground. I ran to one of the rooms and slammed the door shut, but he kicked in the door. When the door opened, I could see his face, and I will never, ever forget that moment. However, at that very moment, the police caught up to him and shot his foot. The guy started screaming in pain. Shortly after that, he managed to jump outside of a window and disappeared. The policemen chased after him, but unfortunately, they failed to arrest him. I never saw that guy again. I'm glad that I survived that incident, but I also feel nervous that he'll come to my house again. From that day on, I always made sure I locked all the doors and windows.
After a failed marriage, I became a bit of a nomad, wandering across country on foot with no particular destination. It was a stupid idea. but I was in a very hopeless place back then, and just looking to experience something new. I've been traveling down South Dakota and hitched a ride with a truck driver into Nebraska. For those of you who have never been to that state, there are large sections of land that go on for miles with nothing but cornfields lining either side of the road. We split ways at a rest stop, and I made my way into what I now know to be the Sand Hills of Nebraska. The Sand Hills region is one of the most isolated areas in the United States, 20,000 square miles of nothing but dunes and prairies. I planned on hitchhiking my way to the nearest town and catching a bus to visit a friend I had in Omaha. But I found out the hard way that this stretch of road was not ideal for hitchhiking. I barely saw any cars going down this road, and the ones that did completely ignored me. 12 hours had passed, and I was running low on food and water. I was utterly exhausted at this point, and I needed to find a place to rest for a while. I had about an hour left of daylight. Lucky for me, I happened to come upon an old farmhouse that was situated about a half-mile away from the main road. From a distance, I thought this place may have been occupied, but when I got closer, it was clear to me that this house was abandoned. This was around the fall, so weather in Nebraska wasn't terrible. However, the nights were a bit on the cold side, so I decided to hold up in this house for the night and continue my journey the next day. I had enough supplies to last me one more night. The house was your typical rotting husk. Smelled like mold, severe water damage, creaking floors, etc. The living room seemed to be the only decent place to settle down at, so I unpacked my sleeping bag and eventually dozed off. I woke up to the sound of floorboards creaking. I immediately sat up and listened. I could hear several pairs of footsteps thudding all around the house. They were coming from upstairs, downstairs, on the back porch outside, and even in the same room with me. But I didn't see a thing. I quickly got to my feet and walked over to the nearest window and peered out. What I saw was truly alarming and sent a wave of nausea through my entire body. Several cloaked figures were standing side by side. They appeared to be encircling the house. Because of the footsteps I heard, I thought there may have been people in the house with me. So in an effort to defuse things, I made another big brain decision and spoke up. Hello? I'm sorry if I'm trespassing. I was just looking for a place to rest for the night. I thought this place was abandoned. Again, I'm sorry. All the footsteps stopped at once. An eerie silence followed. It was so quiet that I could have heard a mouse shitting in the corner. I got this real bad feeling in my gut, so I reached into my backpack and pulled out my hunting knife. I gathered the rest of my things and slowly moved out into the hallway. Aside from the mysterious figures outside, I was also thinking of what was making those footsteps inside the house. As I said, I heard several footsteps when I woke up, so I figured it wouldn't be long before I ran into someone inside the house. But after combing the entire downstairs, I didn't see or hear anything. I could tell something was very off. That bad feeling I mentioned earlier intensified, despite the fact that I knew there was a bunch of weirdos in cloaks waiting for me outside. Something told me that if I didn't leave the house that very moment, something terrible was going to happen to me. The house was located in a wide-open clearing. Beyond the clearing was a barrier of tall grass. When I left through the front door, I stopped directly in front of the house. No matter which direction I looked, I saw another hooded menace blocking my way. I suddenly felt this heat on my back. I quickly turned around. I cannot explain how this happened. Moments before, I was inside that house, walking around, and it was now on fire. I backed away. I decided that I was going to run through the figures and get the hell out of Dodge. But when I turned back around, the figures were nowhere in sight. Things were getting way too bizarre for me at that point. The only thing I knew for sure was that I had to get the fuck out of that place. When I got back out to the main road, I didn't stop walking until I finally got to a town, whose name I can't remember. The rest of my time in Nebraska went well, and I got my life together shortly after I got back home from my trip. As long as I live, I'll never forget that old farmhouse and those mysterious cloaked figures. This incident still baffles me to this day.